Hi, I'm Marla McCowan, Director of Training, Outreach, and Support with the Michigan Indigent Defense Commission. We're recording a live training session today to assist trial court funding units with submitting their fiscal year 2022 compliance plan and cost analysis. The plans and costs need to be submitted through the Michigan Indigent Defense Commission's new grant management system called EGrAMS. We designed this training session to take users through EGrAMS step by step. As you review the training, feel free to pause during sections and work through your own plans and costs all the way through to the final submission step. Okay. So, for everyone this year, this is a new process. Like I said, you're going to be entering the fiscal year 2022 compliance plan and cost analysis through the Michigan Indigent Defense Commission's new EGrAMS application. If you are familiar with other systems, I just want to point out here, you know that you're in the right place if you look up to the left-hand corner and you see the MIDC's logo. This means that you're in the right place. This is the MIDC's EGrAMS application. And the other thing too, on this homepage, when you get to the EGrAMS application, is we have a link at the bottom of this text that will take you to additional training. So we have tried to record some other sessions, some sessions that we think would be useful, both in terms of, some substantive review of the compliance plan and cost analysis. We have a short tutorial that we recorded and put on our YouTube channel. Our Northern Michigan Regional Manager, Melissa Wangler, did a nice training on Standard 5 in her region a couple of weeks ago. We put that up as well. And we also will continue to put these different trainings related to EGrAMS on our website too. So check out our website, and this link here will take you to the Michigan Indigent Defense Commission's grants page. The way that you get to EGrAMS is through a website. If some people are using the portal to access EGrAMS, that's a little bit of a separate process, and I can talk you through that, or at least try to talk you through that in some maybe one-on-one support if you want to give me a call, or we can share a screen. But for everyone else, what we're talking about here is we're going to be accessing the MIDC's EGrAMS application through this website, which is at the address, the URL at the bottom of the screen. And for anyone, if you haven't done these steps yet, you do need to create a user profile. We did do some training around this. I know some people who are participating this morning have already set up your user profile, but if you haven't, please do so. This is an important step here. When you land on the EGrAMS website, over to the left-hand side, the menu gives you an option to create your user profile. You'll select that. Create a username and password and fill out all of the information for yourself. Anything that has a little asterisk next to it needs to be filled out completely, or else it won't process the request. There are a couple of pieces here just to keep in mind when we're talking about designation or title. This refers to your job within your local trial court funding unit. So you're going to use the menu application and select the job description that best fits your job description. Select that and fill it out there in this in the user designation and title. For the role code, what we're talking about over here, that's going to be referring to your role in this grant relationship here. So with the Michigan Indigent Defense Commission's EGrAMS application, you're going to be the grantee. Make sure you select grantee when you're registering your user profile. If you select grantor or regional manager, you're not going to be able to enter your application. We can go in and fix that for you, but please just try to remember to select grantee when you're registering your user profile. So go through all of the steps here, select your parent agency and county. When you see parent agency, we've had a couple of people say to us that federal ID, like the tax ID or something like that, that looks incorrect. Don't worry about that. We don't use that really for any purpose. We will be processing the payments and distributing the payments in the normal way that we have been through the contracting process. And as long as your vendor code is registered with Sigma, and you have been getting payments in the past, that's a way that we know everything is fine there. So don't worry about this like tax ID or the agency ID number or anything like that. Just make sure that you're using the right parent agency, selecting the right agency and county. You can upload a photograph or your signature. You don't have to at this point if you don't want to. We're not requiring that to register your user profile, and you would just select those from your own files on your computer. So after you finish creating your user profile and you select OK, you'll get a prompt to create your security questions. Just answer those. We only require one security question. Fill that out and then select OK again. At that point, your user profile is created successfully. There isn't any additional step that needs to be taken on our end. Like in some other EGrAMS applications, we know that there is like a authentication or an approval process. We don't have that. You can go ahead and get started setting up your FY22 compliance plan application. So when you are starting your application, there are a couple of steps that you need to do to add the application to be associated with your username. Log back into the EGrAMS application using the login credentials that you've recently created. Select OK. When you start the application, the person who starts the application is considered the project director or the owner of the application. Select project director and start a new application. You're going to want to make sure that you're in the add mode and move through to find the move through the menu button. I highlighted there. I'm going to be using that term menu button a couple of times. What I'm talking about there is that rectangle with the 3 little dots in the middle. Select the compliance plan and cost analysis for FY22 and click OK. And that record will be added to your user profile. And then to get started on the application, go back up to the top ribbon for grant application and select enter grant application. You'll see this hyperlinked here. This is a clickable link at this point, this application entry pending. And click OK to get started. You'll get the reminder, of course, that this is due no later than April 27th at 11:59 p.m. Click OK, and you'll be able to get started entering the application information. I just want to go through a couple of quick reminders here. The plan is due by April 27th at 11:59 p.m. We know regional managers have been working with everyone throughout their systems to communicate around, I think generally either some hopes or expectations around submitting drafts. So just please work with them. I don't want to say, any particular time. I'm sure they've provided to you some timing around drafts, review, and returning those to you in order to get those submitted EGrAMS in a timely manner. The commission is going to review all of those plans and costs that are submitted by April 27th, beginning at their June 15th commission meeting. I know some of you work in more than one system. You're going to be entering more than one application. If you haven't already done this yet, you need to set up a multi-agency user profile. That is one step that we have to approve on our end. But if you shoot me a message saying that you set that up, I can go in and approve that very quickly. And then once you're working through EGrAMS, it's a nice display. You can see the various applications that are associated with your user profile, and you can move through those at your own pace. And just a final reminder here, we've had a couple of questions around reporting. We're using EGrAMS just to submit the FY22 compliance plan and cost analysis. For fiscal year 2021, the grant year that we're currently in, you recently submitted your Q1 reports. At end of January, you would have submitted your first quarter reports for fiscal year 2021, and you'll be submitting your Q2 reports also as well for fiscal year 2021. You're going to use the same process that you have been, not EGrAMS, the same process that we have been, and that's detailed on the MIDC's website. A couple of helpful tips. We've suggested to people that you work through your FY22 compliance plan and cost analysis in the Word documents and Excel templates that are available on our website. The reason why we've done this is because we found, as we're working through EGrAMS, that you can copy and paste from a Word document into EGrAMS or from an Excel template. You can go line by line and you can copy things over as well. So it's really convenient and a nice time saver. Plus it also, kind of lets you lay it out in a familiar format because we have just been using, a Word document or Excel templates in the past. You can continue to do that and then transfer it over to EGrAMS relatively easily. And so the final piece here is there is an option for people to be working on the compliance plans and costs. You can assign other people, even if you start the application and you're the owner, the project director, you can assign other people to work on pieces of the plans. Just let us know and we can walk you through adding them to those parts. A question came up at one of our other sessions around whether two people can be working on editing the application at the same time. The answer is yes, you can actually be doing that. Two people can be working on the same time. The only piece is you can't be working on the exact same page at the same time. So if you're working through maybe the components of standard 1, standard 2, standard 3, and somebody else is working on the cost analysis or even standard 5, that's fine. As long as you're not working on the same page, two people can work on it at the same time. So I know a lot of people indicated that they are new to EGrAMS. This session is designed for people who are new to EGrAMS. I've been playing around with the format and the best way to do this here. And I think probably the best way is just to blow up the menu bar that you'll use to navigate around the EGrAMS system once you're logged into it. And you can have these slides and we'll make these available again on our website too. But just a couple of things that I wanted to point out here. You're going to be moving through the application through various sections. Those look like tabs at the top of the page there, beginning with applicant, additional info, and moving along to the right. You can move around those at your own pace. We would ask that you would save your work. And the easiest thing to do that is if you look at the bottom of the bar, you can select save. That's the easiest thing to do is just hit save as you're working if you're moving around by section. The recommended way of moving through the plan is to start at the beginning, that very first applicant tab, and work your way through as you save information and move on to the next page. And so that's the distinction there, that button that says save and move to the next page. That is the recommended way to move through the plans and costs. We're going to skip talking about the validate and errors and done until we're at the conclusion of this training today. But another convenient option for you, again, moving along through the bottom of the navigation page here, you can hit that PDF button and make a PDF version of, or like a copy you can print or save a version. This would be by section as you move through the applications. At the end of entering all of the information for the compliance plan and cost analysis, you can print a complete copy. You can save a copy of PDF and print it, save it for your records as well. And you can come back and really do that at any time. But this PDF version here is nice if you're laying out some information section by section and you want to see how it looks or you want to review it in a different format other than on the EGrAMS screen. Continuing to move over to the bottom right, we would suggest that if you're moving along, if you're not adding any additional information, you can just navigate by page, either forwards or backwards. And you can also move around by selecting that show tree. On every section, there is a tree that you can jump around there as well to various components of that section within the application. I'm moving up to the top right there where it says show documents. If you click on that link, you're going to land on the MIDC's grant manual. It's a great resource that talks about all of the allowable costs. And that's something that will also take you through the reporting process as well. That's the only document that we have linked there right now. If there are other documents that would be helpful for us to link, just let us know. And then finally, I'm moving around kind of counterclockwise here where it says the time limit on the page. 15 minutes per page is the amount that's allotted as you're working page by page. 15 minutes is a lot. It doesn't seem like a lot. And once it starts counting down, that might seem a little bit overwhelming. But all you really have to do is hit save. If you're working on the page and you want some more time, if you hit save, that will refresh that time that you have. And every time that you hit save and move to the next, that will refresh your time as well. So you have 15 minutes on every page that you land on, which really should be ample time, especially if you're using the recommended method where you start with a Word document and all of your information is filled in. And after you get through some of the initial pages where you're typing in contact information, you're really just copying and pasting. It moves you through that fairly quickly if you do that as well. Any questions before I move on? So we're going to start at the beginning of the application, and I'm going to take you through many of these pages here. If you do have any questions, go ahead. You can either unmute yourself and ask, or put them in the chat, and we can pause again in a few minutes. I'll check back. We know we're at the very beginning because we're in the very first tab, far left here, that says applicant. And over to the right here, we can't move backwards. We can only move forwards. That's how we know we're at the very beginning of the application. So you're going to start out entering the applicant information. Most of the users, I believe almost every agency user has this information populated. So you should be able to, once you get here, I'm hoping you're just entering, either just cleaning up some information as necessary, but largely use this to confirm. What you will want to do, though, is add your agency's fiscal year. This refers to your fiscal year, not the MIDC's or the state of Michigan's fiscal year. If you want to enter that here for grant management purposes, you're welcome to do so. And then hit save and move to the next. I'm going to say that a lot because that is, like I said, that's sort of our default for moving through these. Anytime that you're entering information on a page, it's best to hit save and move to the next. This way you're not missing anything. The next page that you get here, you'll be entering the project information. There are two pieces that you have to enter on this page, the amount of fund requested and the project cost. I want you to kind of bookmark this or think about this or make a note here. You will definitely have to come back to this page. In every test that we did, as we worked our way through the final cost analysis, even if we might have been off by just a couple of pennies, by the time you're finalizing the cost analysis at the end, every test case that we did, we had to come back and make revisions to these numbers. But please do put in numbers here. Presumably you have a sense of what the project cost and the amount of funds requested would be from the cost analysis, the template that you're working through. Project cost refers to the total system cost, or at the end, it refers to total expenditures. This is the total system cost that the MIDC would be approving when it comes time to review your compliance plan and cost analysis. The amount of funds requested refers to the MIDC grant funding that you're seeking. So the difference there would be subtracting the local share from the total system cost. And if you're not sure what the local share is, after you hit save and move to the next, you could move to the next page even without entering information as well. But you would see your agency's local share on the very next page. So if you need to navigate here first to see what the local share is in order to do this math to manually, subtract the total system cost, you can do that. We have gone ahead and populated this automatically for everybody, increasing the local share by the statutory 1.2% that's set forth pursuant to the CPI, the annual increase that's required by the MIDC Act. The way that we arrived at the increase of the 1.2% is from by increasing the base or the certified base that was approved in fiscal year 2019. If you have any questions about that number or how we arrived at that calculation, please just let me know. So again, you're going to be entering these numbers here. And again, they can be rough estimates, and certainly they seem to be, through our experience, placeholders. Hit save and move to the next. You see your local share. There's nothing to do here. You're not going to be able to change that number. You can simply just look at it or use it for reference purposes or in order to do that calculation. And in fact, if you try to, hit save and move to the next, it will tell you didn't make any changes to this data. Anytime you get this prompt that says no changes were made, in order to navigate to the very next page, you can click OK. Don't hit save and move to the next. Just use those arrow buttons over to the right of the menu navigation bar. You're going to need to enter the contacts for 3 people, at least 3 roles within your system. And that would be the authorizing official, the financial officer, and the project director or primary contact, which the information should largely default to your information as you're entering this here. You can serve in more than one of these roles. It might be in some systems that the same person is all of these roles, or you may also need to assign 2 or 3 people to work on the financial components. That's fine. As you move through these here, you do at least have to assign someone. And like I said, it can be the same person for all 3 of these roles in order to complete the user profile. So just work through here with the authorizing official, their name and contact information. You will need to have all of this in front of you in order to complete this. And you need to complete all portions of this. Again, if there's an asterisk next to it. You can select the person's job, just like you would within the designation or title when you're setting up your own user profile. And hopefully their job description appears here. Every time you move through, you'll get a prompt asking if you want to, every time you hit save and move to the next, it will ask if you want to add somebody else. And you can hit OK. And you need to do this, like I said, for all 3 roles, filling out the authorizing official, primary point of contact, and financial officer. And once you're done entering all of those roles, or at least those 3 roles, the way to move on after you hit save and move to the next, it will ask you, do you want to add anyone else, or are you done, ready to move to the next page? You would hit cancel when you're done and ready to move to the next page. You're then going to be prompted to certify that you are authorized to submit the compliance plan and cost analysis. The MIDC is not going to do anything specific to verify this other than, we're assuming that if you're starting the application, filling it out and intend to submit it, that you have authorization locally to do that. If somebody else later on is the required official to sign the contract, that's a separate piece, and they'll be the authorizing official, and those authorizing officials we know can sometimes change, and we can deal with that when it comes time for contracting. But for purposes of submitting the compliance plan and cost analysis, the project director or probably everybody who's listening in on this call would be the person submitting this. Once you click that you certify that you're authorized to submit the application, you can either hit save or save to move to the next, and this information will automatically populate. We know some people were trying to complete this information. It's not, it'll be automatically populated with the information that you enter for yourself from your user profile. So just click that certification button and hit save and move to the next. You're going to move through here and start working through the compliance plan application. Starting first with the questions that we've asked in the past couple of years, asking about what type of delivery system do you have. Now, we changed this a little bit. We noticed that there was a typo. It's asking about the current indigent defense delivery system that you have. You'll fill this out and continue to move through the application questions. Make sure that you're paying attention over here. I put a little star next to the 1, the 2, and the 3. You're going to want to make sure that you navigate, use that button to scroll through. Some of the questions are hidden or I don't want to say hidden. They don't display fully on the page itself. So you're going to want to make sure that you use that navigation button to scroll down to make sure that you're catching all the questions so that you don't miss anything. And as you continue to enter information, hit save and move to the next. Another great reason to use the Word document when you're working through the compliance plan application through the EGrAMS system is that all of the questions in the application are numbered in the same sequence that they're numbered in the EGrAMS system. So for example, if you're working on question 5, 6, 7, 8, you're following along, you're going to enter the answers for 5 and 6 exactly the same way. And like I said, if you're working through the Word document here, you can take the text that you've entered here for the application and copy that and paste it into the EGrAMS application. We have gotten questions about how many characters are allowed in the text boxes as you're entering the information, even from like a Word document. So just by way of example here, this answer to question number 6, you see there's a few sentences, it's a paragraph, not a particularly long paragraph, but a paragraph of text there. When that gets copied and pasted over, it's 339 characters in the text box that's available. The text box itself can accommodate 10,000 characters. So I don't think that there should be any problem with, even if you have a very long answer, there shouldn't be any problem with entering that information. So again, you can just move through and copy and paste. And when you're done completing the information, question by question on that page, hit save and move to the next. You're going to answer these all as you're moving through here. And I just want to say a quick note here. We worked through this compliance plan application and cost analysis with Diana Kessler from Huron County. She was extraordinarily generous with her time. Some of the content here is not from Diana's application. I moved some things from some other pieces. You shouldn't take any of the substantive information here as being, presumptively, approved or anything like that by the MIDC. We're talking more here just about form, and I'm just using some of the text here to illustrate. Any substantive, information that you would have, questions, concerns, please make sure that you're working through your regional manager. And as we move through the rest of the application, again, I would encourage you just to consider this for form, not necessarily substance. But as you move through the application here, you're going to answer all of the questions for all through all of standard 1. I'm starting here now on standard 2. And again, you can just, navigate through. If you accidentally click this arrow forward button after you've entered some information without saving it, you will get a warning that you didn't save the information. It's a nice little sort of foolproof way of making sure that you don't lose anything here. So again, like I said, the preferred method after you get this prompt, you should always be hitting save and move to the next. I'm not going to go through all of the standards here. I would encourage you to check out the recorded training that we did called What's New in Fiscal Year 2022, which is available on through our website on the grants page and on our YouTube channel. It's a short tutorial that goes through all of the questions, anything that's different in fiscal year 2022. We would encourage you to review that as you're working through your plans and costs so that you are answering all of the questions, either if they're familiar to you or in many cases, some of the questions have been revised. We would encourage you to check out that training. One thing that we've been asking about for the last couple of years is for systems, if you have a prison in your county, if you answer yes to that question, you will be required to enter some information around how representation is provided, how indigent defense is delivered to people who are charged with crimes while they're in MDOC custody. You're also going to get a question that asks you about whether you seek reimbursement for the cost from counsel from the MDOC. Please fill that out as well. If you select that you have a prison in your county, you select yes, for example, but you don't put any information in the text box, you will get an error here. And I just wanted to alert you to that, not even necessarily for this question, but any other questions where you see an error that talks about a dependency not being answered. So if you answer yes to a question, there's an expectation around, in many cases, there's an expectation around completing the next question, the dependent or related question. So when you get an error, if you get an error like that, just go back to the initial question and make sure that you're filling out the questions that are related. And so also here, for example, if you select yes that you have a prison, you either have to say yes or no as to whether you seek reimbursement. Again, this is just to refer to this idea of there are questions that are there, the errors refer to dependency problems. So this is, you have to go back and select the dependent questions based on your initial answers. Sometimes we call that skip logic as well. The main changes, of course, this year for fiscal year 22 have to do with standard 5 and questions related to how your system is going to implement the public defense function, be independent from the judiciary. So just pay attention to these questions beginning around number 35. This will take you through, again, a series of questions. Some are yes, no. Some are just short answer, fill in the blank. You'll move through those there, with the longer text questions being around handling an appeal process, for lack of a better description, questions 42 through 44. After you move through the standard 5 questions, you're going to get some final questions, which we just put in a miscellaneous tab. Some of those have to do with ancillary staff. Do you have ancillary staff? If you answer yes or no, be prepared. If you answer yes, again, this is one of those dependency questions or skip logic. If you say yes, you need to answer the follow-up questions regarding what standards do the staff members meet and how are you tracking their time. After you answer the ancillary staff questions, you're going to get a question about whether you are seeking reimbursement for the cost of planning here. By statute, systems are entitled to seek reimbursement for the cost of planning. You're welcome to do that. We're asking you to report that a little bit differently this year. So if you are asking for reimbursement under, we call it section 13.2, referring to the MIDC Act, you can choose yes here and make sure that you also select that you have receipts showing or tracking, some sort of methodology of tracking the time for people who worked on the cost of planning. You do need to enter, like last year, the actual total cost that you're seeking reimbursement for. And again, I'll show you where to enter that in the cost analysis. It's a little different this year. Answering the questions here, the substantive questions, and then you're going to be putting this number in the cost analysis if you're asking for reimbursement. Before moving on to the cost analysis, this is in a little bit of a different order than we've asked you to fill this out before. We're asking for the attorney list up front here before finalizing the cost analysis pieces. So in the cost analysis, we're asking about the attorneys accepting assignments in your system. Our training analyst, Deborah Mitchell, has been working really hard to pre-populate all of this for you, using the information about the attorneys working in your system through fiscal year 21, those first quarter reports that you submitted at the end of January. We took the attorney list that you submitted with your quarterly reports, and Deborah entered all of the information for you, the names of the attorneys and their P numbers. So when you get to this page, hopefully it's populated for you. Although we're asking you to do is just verify that the information is correct. You can add more people here, or if you need to, you can delete people as well. But hopefully a lot of the work is done. We were hoping this would be a big time saver for you. If there's anything else that we can do to assist, just let us know. But this is information that we need to have populated here for the attorneys accepting assignments in your system. Now I'm going to move on to the cost analysis. Before I do that, are there any questions? So hopefully the components generally are familiar to you, information that we've been seeking in the last couple of years regarding compliance, meeting the objectives of the standards around some personnel, and then the attorneys doing the work in your system. The balance of this will be around the cost analysis and then submitting the application. But before I move on, I just want to pause for, are there any questions? I'm sorry, I haven't even been paying attention to the chat. Anything, Susan, before I move on?
There was one question about the local share number, and that was my region, so I'll follow up with him after the session. Otherwise, there are no questions.
Okay, great. Thanks. So we're going to move on to completing the cost analysis. If you, most people have a model where you either have employees or you contract with attorneys individually. Some systems have, they use a vendor or a nonprofit office, a public defender office to deliver services. If you do have that, we call that a vendor model or a vendor nonprofit model for their public defender. There's a separate question if you select yes to this question here. That only applies to like 6 or 7 systems in Michigan, so we're not going to go through that at this point. But just know if you do have that, if you select yes, you're going to be prompted to answer some information around the policy for funds that remain on deposit with that vendor. That's separate here. We could talk about that separately because like I said, it doesn't apply to most people. Most people are going to select no here and then just move through the standard tab containing all of the components of the cost analysis. Again, that should be pretty familiar to you. So beginning with personnel, you're going to include information for any personnel that you have working in your system. You're going to start with a description, use the menu bar. And again, these are position or job descriptions here. We don't necessarily need the names of the people. We just are looking for the job description. We know in a lot of places, if you're adding positions, you might not even know the name of the person, right? So you're just going to want to stick with the job description here. And you're also going to want to enter how that person is being paid as personnel for units of measurement here. That U of M stands for units of measurement. So as you enter the information along this row, along the description for this person, line by line, you're going to enter information around the quantity, the number of those positions that you need, the rate, which we are hoping ends up being an hourly rate because that's the easiest thing for us to manage on our end for the grant management system. And then the units would refer to the hours themselves. You can use this units of measurement or U of M. The menu is going to give you a number of options. Again, I think for personnel, it's best to use hours if you can. There might be some reason to use something else, but it would be best to use hours there and then fill that out. So I'll show you what this looks like here. Some of these other pieces around the description like nights or miles, that's going to relate to like when you're entering information for travel and training. But for personnel, we're going to stick with hours for this example here. So in this example here, the description is administrative assistant. In this system, there's only one person who meets that description or who would be entered here for this line at the rate there, the $18.11 is referring to the hourly rate. This person works about 35 hours a week. I think it was 1,820 hours. And again, this is for the year. So when you enter units of measurement, it's going to give you the total there. When you enter the quantity, the rate, the units, it's going to calculate that automatically, which hopefully is helpful and helps to reduce some calculation errors, or sometimes if the formulas aren't transferring exactly perfectly in the Excel template, the grant management system is designed to calculate this using that formula for you. So again, using a quantity, rate, and units of measurement, you're going to get a total there. You're going to complete this for all members of your personnel within your system. And I know for some people, this is going to be a lot. Some people have a lot of people on staff, and some people might have, people that are in the administrative assistant position, but at different rates, for example, or you might have attorneys that are at different rates. We would suggest here, you can either describe that in the narrative section, or there's also an option at each line to enter notes about that line. Anytime you have any text in any of these sections, personnel, fringes, anything, you do have to include some narrative. It's going to require you to put some narrative. But again, this is around just generally the category. So just enter some basic information, as public defender staff member, or, whatever that looks like, some narrative around the position itself. But if you want to get into more detail, you can go into line by line and enter notes about that line description. I'm going to move on here. Oh, and this is what I was just going to say in terms of narrative. This is just a quick example of what we're looking for here. Just some information around this category description here, personnel. And again, anytime you have anything in the category, you do need to have this narrative section will be required to be filled out for you. Click OK in order to save it, not just close. You have to click OK and then save and move to the next section. The next section is fringe benefits. If you have personnel and you also have fringe benefits for those positions, you will want to fill this out again, line by line. One thing to note here, you're going to go line by line through the various types of fringe benefits that are offered. And again, this is all, this is available in menu format here. You can select the various benefits that might be applicable. There's also an other category. One thing to remember here is it's going to be taking the total from the personnel section. So you may remember here when we were in personnel, the total was $32,960 for the personnel category. It moves that over into the, this now becomes the units or the formula that the fringe benefits would be operating off of. And for everything in the fringe benefits category, we're talking about, you have to enter that in terms of a percent. So for any of these line items that you're entering category by category in fringe benefits, you're going to come up with a percent of the total personnel in order to get the total for this section here for the fringe benefits. And if you have any questions about that, I mean, I know there are some benefits that are offered in a dollar amount, not necessarily a percent. My recommendation here is just to kind of play around with the percents till you get to the right total, which again is a reason, to have everything kind of mapped out in your Excel spreadsheet. I think it makes it a little bit easier when you're trying to make those calculations. If you have any trouble though, just, give me or Rebecca a call if you want, or your regional manager as well. Of course, obviously your regional manager would be helpful in terms of the substantive pieces, but for the calculations, Rebecca's really good at this here too. And the other piece that I just want to mention, we had a couple of questions about, well, like, can we put the total in the total category or the state grant category, and would it automatically figure out the percent? And the answer is no. Unfortunately, I tried that workaround a couple of different ways, and it's just not possible. So enter the percent, it will calculate the units and come up with a total for the fringe benefit category. I'm going to move through contractual contracts for attorneys. This would be the next section that you have. Again, you would go line by line. If you have these descriptions that seem very similar, maybe with different rates for this example, this would be an opportunity to use the notes designation over there. And the notes here would go, line by line, and you could indicate something around the standard 8 rates. And just again, a reminder, you would click OK to make sure that you capture your notes before moving on to the next page. And again, every section does need to have a narrative completed if you have numbers or anything entered in for the section requesting grant funds. For experts and investigators, again, this might be another area where you have some very similar line items and you would want to make use of the notes feature to make a distinction between either rates of pay or who would be using those various line items. For example, in some instances, it might be the defender office, and you might have a separate line item set aside for investigators or experts for conflict roster. You'll move through the contracts for construction if you have any of those costs this year, or other types of contractual components to your cost analysis. Again, talk with your regional manager about what those costs might be. And moving through, now I'm on equipment. Anytime that you select here, I'm in the equipment category here, other fits a lot of descriptions for equipment we've found. And anytime that you choose other, you will get another line that drops down below it, requiring that you include a description around exactly what other means. So it's not even like just an option here to use the notes category. This is going to be required if you choose other. But the notes category can really be helpful, especially if you're using some sort of calculation that, like for example, you pay your cell phone or your scanner bill monthly. That rate isn't going to be by month, but there isn't another way to do the calculation. So I would recommend here just doing your annual total and then breaking down what the monthly rate is in the notes section. I'm moving now through travel and training. Again, anytime you enter anything here from the menu button, you're going to get some options here. And you're going to enter these. Anytime you enter anything here, you're going to be prompted to describe exactly what that travel or training relates to. So it might be travel to a conference, or it might also be travel to meet with a client. So just find the most appropriate description, enter that in the line item. Further provide some detail below in the box that will drop down below that item, and then enter the units of measurement. And as I said, this might vary depending on, it's not always going to be just something as simple as miles. There might be something else related there, including, especially for travel for training, hotel might involve nights, or meals might involve nights as well. A quick note here on travel and trading related to subscriptions. There are a lot of systems that use the National Association for Public Defense or the State Appellate Defender Office's Criminal Defense Resource Center for training opportunities. And so they purchase memberships for their attorneys from those organizations, NAPD or SATO. SATO raised their rates for 2022. So we went ahead and pre-populated the rates that are used for those subscriptions. It's $40 for each NAPD membership and $75 for each SATO membership. Don't change those. But this might be an area where if you were planning on those, and maybe, for example, you used $50 an hour for SATO membership rates, you might not have the same totals moving on forward as you complete your cost analysis, and a reason why you'll have to go back to the beginning to revise some of those numbers. This is a pretty common thing that we've seen through our testing but we wanted to include the correct numbers here so that we weren't having to make revisions later on. So these numbers here that will be automatically populated if you choose these options are the correct annual rates for these subscriptions. I'm completing out here the supplies and other category. I mentioned before, if you are seeking reimbursement for the cost of planning under the MIDC Act under section 13.2, we're asking this year that you include that in the cost analysis itself. This is going to be the easiest way for us to process these requests. So select other, and again here, I'm in the other expenses, supplies, services. This is sort of the catch-all, anything else kind of category. Select other, you're going to get a drop-down menu to describe it and describe it as reimbursement for planning. And this is where you can use an attachment feature. As I said a few minutes ago, on every line item, you can either include individual notes or you can upload a file. And this is where we would ask that you attach some documentation around reimbursement that might be requested in order for us to process payment to you. If you have any other questions about that, again, you can reach out to your regional manager or me or Rebecca, and we can talk you through this. When you complete your cost analysis, the next page that you get to is a summary. You're gonna review this here. As I mentioned, anytime that you have numbers or any text in any of the sections of the cost analysis, you do need to include a narrative. I have here, just wanted to illustrate, I left out a narrative around equipment. So if you see like contracts for attorneys, if you look over to the right, the narrative looks like a yellow, it's a yellow box, same for contracts, but this equipment is grayed out. That's because I didn't include the narrative there. So I would get an error if I tried to submit it at this point, requiring me to complete that narrative box. So this is a little clue that I probably need to go back right now and add some narrative and save that information so that I don't get an error when I try to submit. Just a little tip here for how you can avoid some of those errors that you might see. So this final piece here is called the source of funds page. You're going to see here the total expenditures at the top. This is what it's tallied up for you as you've gone through and entered everything for the through the cost analysis. The local share contribution, again, that's automatically calculated here for the increase of 1.2% from the base certified in fiscal year 2019. You're going to subtract that local share. And again, you have to do this manually. You're going to subtract that local share from the total expenditures and enter the MIDC grant funds that you're requesting from the state. Enter that here where I have the green rectangular box. And this is it. This is the last piece here where you're going to enter. This is the final information that you're going to enter. And so you can select done. As I mentioned, though, the most common error, in fact, I think every time that we tested this out, we got an error around the fact that the numbers that we have here, this total expenditures in the state grant did not match what we had entered very early on around the project. So what you're going to need to do after you hit done, after you save all this information and you're ready to go, you're going to want to navigate. You're going to get an error that's saying that the funds don't match. Or if you get this error, it's going to say that the funds don't match. And the way that you correct this is the fastest way is to use those arrow buttons and navigate all the way back to the beginning of the sections there. Get back to that one of those early pages. It's page 2, the project information page in the applicant tab. You're going to revise those initial numbers that you had. So, make a note of these, whatever you have here, make a note of the total expenditures. Again, that's the total system cost. And the state grant contribution, which is the MIDC or the funds requested. Revise those numbers to match what's on the last page. And at this point, then after you revise those numbers, you can hit save. Before hitting done again, though, our recommendation, in fact, I think it might even be a requirement, is that you validate all of the sections. So it's going to walk you through going section by section, checking for any errors that might occur. And if you land on a page that has errors, the errors button will be highlighted. So when you hit validate, it'll walk you through. And if you do get any errors, another one of those dialog boxes will pop up like I showed here. It'll give you exactly where the error is, and you can click on that error and it will take you to it as well. The most common errors that we've seen are around skipping questions. So again, this is a reason why you'll want to work through the Word version. That's really the easiest way to make sure that you're tracking, you're going number by number through the compliance plan application so that you don't miss any questions there. Another common error that we got, like I mentioned already, is that we didn't fill out the narrative section. So again, throughout the cost analysis, anytime you have numbers in any of those sections, you need to complete the narrative box. And again, once you hit the error button, it will take you there. It'll be, highlighted in red that you need exactly where the error is and what you need to complete. And then the final thing that we saw was a lot of those, what I referred to already as those dependency questions. So you answered yes to a question, but you didn't answer the follow-up. So it'll give you an error saying that there's a missing dependency or something like that. So it'll just, again, once you click on that, it'll navigate you to the error where the information is missing. After you get done validating everything, it'll let you know that all sections were validated successfully, which is great news. You select OK, and you're ready to close this and move this on to the next stage, which is submitting the application to the MIDC. You might have other people who want to look at this before you do that. That's fine. But when you're ready to submit the application, this is what you're going to want to do. Go back to that initial page where you're you're logged in and you're on sort of this home page here, and navigate back to the grant application. And instead of selecting entering grant application, this time you're going to hit print or submit the application. This is going to give you an option of, you can do, like I said, the whole thing in a PDF preview if you want to, either with or without attachments. It will give you a couple of nice options there. And when you're ready to move on, select that button. This again is a hyperlink that you'll select. It'll take you to the next page, which lets you view this in a couple of different ways here. And again, you can print this if you want to. There isn't any need to validate anymore here, but you can print either with or without attachments if that's of interest to you. And when you're ready to submit it, you select the submit button. It's going to tell you that the next step is moving it on to the regional manager, and if you want to continue with that. And assuming you do, you would select OK, and it'll tell you it was moved on to the next stage. And after that, if you do submit this to your regional manager, submit it to the MIDC for regional manager review, the regional managers will work with you around the timing of that review. And assuming if it's before April 27th, significantly before, hopefully April 27th, if regional managers have a chance to review, if there are any revisions that are requested, there is a little window of opportunity before April 27th where that could be sent back to you to make any revisions that are requested by staff. We'll have some training around that too. Which will hopefully answer, any of the questions that you have or about that process as well. So look for those training opportunities. Those are available on the Sign Up Genius, the same way that you signed up for today's session. We'll also have an opportunity, of course, we're more than happy to provide one-on-one support for finalizing the submission through the EGrAMS system.